Welcome to the Grandpa Channel, where stories don't fade, they get recorded. I'm Steve Harris. My grandkids call me Rivers. This podcast is where grandpas and grandchildren pull up a chair, turn on a mic, and let her rip. Grandpa stories are chock full of wisdom, life lessons, and frankly, funny as hell. Your stories are the magic elixir to help your grandkids navigate Mr. Toad's wild ride, aka life. Let's Grandpa. Listen up, grandpas. Have you actually pulled the trigger on recording your life story? I'm talking video, baby. They want to remember your corny jokes, your crooked smile, your rugged good looks, and the jaunty bounce of your voice. What if I told you there was a really easy way to do this? Recently, I sat down and I told my life story on video. Not the whole thing, but the good stuff, the messy stuff, the funny stuff. The parts I didn't want to forget and the parts that I did not want my kids and my grandkids to forget. Planted Media made it so easy. They came to me, set up everything, and then they did some editing voodoo magic that made me look like $1 million. Go to plantedmediaco.com and tell them Rivers sent you, and you'll get a nice little Grandpa Channel discount. All right, back to the show. Welcome to the Grandpa Channel. I have a wonderful guest today, a friend of over 30 years. He is wonderfully creative, and he's famous. You might be the most famous guy that we've interviewed so far, but there is a wonderful connection to, drumroll please, the Tater Tot, one of my most favorite things in the entire world. And my friend's name is Steve Grigg, and he has graced us with his presence this morning. So, Steve, tell me just a little bit about you and your family.
Well, so I am the second youngest of 8 kids. So when I came on the scene, it was almost, you know how it is, it's almost like 2 families. Whereas I have
the founders and the...
Well, I have 5, yes. I have 5 older sisters and then an older brother and a younger sister. So the family was fairly well established when I came along. But their history is way more interesting than mine. My mother was born in 1911. If I figure it out differently, I'll fact.
We'll issue a retraction.
I think my dad was born in 1909. How come I don't have that committed to memory? It's just they were old. Mm-hmm. Well, they were getting on in years when I came along. My father. My father, Nephi, F. stands for Francis. So he went by F. Nephi Grigg. So when I came along, he was in the white heat of his business life. He, F. Nephi Grigg and Golden Grigg, his brother, founded Orida Foods. Orida Foods as an entity was developed in 1952. And then in 1953, the Tater Tot was invented. There's never one person that does everything. There's always a lot of people. But what's happened over the years is the credit had kind of been bestowed on him. Greatness had been, forced upon him. And he has kind of wore that moniker for the rest of his life.
Proudly
wore it. But and the Tater Tot was invented in 1953. And I was invented in 1954. So
you were looking down from heaven.
I want to go there.
Sign me up.
So growing up as a kid, I didn't really think anything of it. But he was very famous in the small town of Ontario, Oregon, where the original Orida plant is. And so I just thought I was like everybody else. But I found out later that I wasn't really a celebrity, but I didn't lack for friends or anything. But it was interesting growing up with him because he was always busy, always going somewhere. They were on the cutting edge of technology even back then.
Back up a little bit. And what did Nephi? What did he see that kind of led him to, what were the rudimentary beginnings? You can see how much I love Tater Tots.
And I probably don't love them as much as you do. Consume plenty. So he came from a family of 13 kids. They grew up during the Depression. So they were Depression-era children. And nothing went to waste. When they were just kids, they grew up on there was a little farm there in Vale, Oregon, and they would pick sweet corn in the field, their little field, and they would put it in ice water immediately, and they'd pick it in the evening when it was cool, put that corn in ice water, and then the next morning they had a little rickety wagon, and they would take that corn out and they would go around and sell it to the locals. And I always bragged that he could sell fridges to Eskimos. So they sold corn to farmers, and I thought that's pretty good. However,
was he a natural born salesman?
I think he was a natural, pleasant guy, and very charismatic, and I think he had the gift of gab. But they were very industrious, those two, and they were thick as thieves, and just really good friends. And so that little enterprise grew. So it grew, and until they couldn't meet the demand they had created, so they contracted with local farmers that they could have a portion of their sweet corn to make up their product. And so that went on for a long time, and then eventually it was other produce. And there were companies along the way in the journey to Ore-Ida. And eventually they had Grigg Brothers Produce and, other little enterprises. And they would grow all the sweet corn and everything. But see, all those products, the growing season has an end. What can we do besides corn? Well, what goes with corn? Potatoes. And so they started adding potatoes to the mix. And now, I've jumped ahead quite a number of years from their depression era upbringing. And so now they have a plant. So now they had the ability to make French fries. See,
Was that a relatively new thing, making French fries, or were there lots of companies doing it?
Well, they wanted to be, in his formative years, he rubbed shoulders with J.R. Simplot, Joe Albertson. Even though they competed, they were acquaintances, they were peers. So they wanted to do French fries just like Simplot. And so they were doing French fries, and potatoes are round and French fries are square. So,
of course,
everyone knows that, right? And so they're, they would sell the shavings, the shards or whatever. They would sell it to a local rancher who used it to supplement his feed. Maybe he was a dairy farmer. Anyway, he would sell for a pittance. And one day it struck him that here's this potato which is being sold as a French fry and at a premium price. And once it gets shaped, the leftovers were of hardly any value. And so that's when his upbringing kicked in, and he said, there's got to be something. Now, at this point, Ore-Ida Foods had, we'll call it a test kitchen. And so the Tater Tot, I think the Tater Tot was a brain trust. It was a
collective effort.
It was a collaborative effort, but I think it was his spark of inspiration that said, let's see if we can't do something and make some money off of these leftovers. And so they, what do? You chop them up, you season them, and you put a little flour in there, and
you bind them.
I didn't bring a picture. I didn't bring the Holy Board, Holey. Holy Board. They had this board about yay big. It was a piece of like 3/4-inch plywood. Rows of holes in it. Some of them were different sizes. And my Uncle Golden would take that glop and he would press it through there, and my dad would cut them off with a knife. Some were longer, some were shorter, and they'd fry them up and taste them. And eventually they came to the size and the shape of this convenience food. So remember, it's the 50s. World War II has ended. And the United States is in this sort of inspired renaissance, if you will, convenience, etc. And they wanted to do something.
Labor saving.
Yeah, well, yes, convenience for the housewife and for everybody. So they started they wanted to market this item, but they didn't know really what to call it. So they had a company-wide competition. What do we name this thing? And it was a lady named Clora Leigh Orton who came up with Tater Tots. Tater for potatoes and tots for small. And so Tater Tots were born. And when they first marketed them, they were very, very modestly priced. Didn't sell well. And it wasn't until after some research that they upped the price
And then the sales
and then the sales went up with it.
Very interesting.
And so, I mean, let's back up. The corn and potato and produce industry, I mean, back in the late 40s, early 50s, they were shipping corn as far as Seattle and Denver and stuff. It was going all around. What they came up with, what I think is revolutionary, there was a frozen foods plant that was built in Ontario. It was by the river, it was by the railroads, but it failed. And so that plant, Bridgeport, I think was the name of the company, they were going to auction off that plant. So my brothers thought, this is it. And of course, they didn't have the money to, $500,000 to, back then, to buy this plant. And so they got local businessmen with whom they were well acquainted. And in fact, local farmers, they were convinced of the benefit to them to have this food processing plant there. And so farmers put up crops as collateral. There were some influential businessmen because they went to the bank and they told them what they were going to do. They were going to sell potatoes and they were going to ship them frozen potatoes, because they had already invented the fries, and they were going to ship them. And they said, well, we can't lend you money for that because potatoes will turn black after a while. And so they came up with a process. They would cook those French fries and then quick freeze them. And they had a process. They would quick freeze them, and then that would prevent them from going black. And so there's a little bit of credit in that industry, because before, in that plant, once they procured that plant, they had railroad cars pull up, and they had these great big, called them cooling towers, and they would have ice and up in there, and the ice would come down in big chutes, and they would package that corn, that sweet corn, in crates, because they would keep it, because the cold water, the ice water, kept them fresh. And so that idea kind of stayed with them. That's how they were able to ship produce in railroad cars.
So if I were to meet your dad, and I never have, he passed away quite a while ago, what do you think I'd walk away from? I mean, is just was he a storytelling, sort of person, or, what kind of a guy was he?
He was, he was definitely a storytelling guy. And he was a one-liner kind of guy.
What are some one-liners that come to your mind when you think about your dad?
I have a cousin, the son of Golden. His name was Gary Grigg, and he was talking to Nephi one time and said, how do I succeed in life? And he said, bite off more than you can chew, and then chew it. Really? And that was his adage. That's what he did, getting that plant. I mean, nobody thought that was even possible. So he bit off more than he could chew, then he chewed that. And when they were first married, they lived in a dugout out in the hills of eastern Oregon, in Ontario. So the local car dealership wanted some publicity, and they had a rickety old pickup. You know those Ford pickups that have those wooden slats on the side of it? From the 30s. And then they said, if you'll come down and get married on this sideboard of this pickup, we'll give you the pickup. And so he was courting my mother, Addie Crummett, at the time. And my vision is that he grabbed her by the hand, they ran down there. They did get married on that running board. Well, see, so that was the publicity for the car dealership. Yeah. And so they got married on the running board of that truck, and then they got the truck. So he took advantage of the opportunities that came. And then I think the more you bite off and chew, the more comes your way. So you would come away feeling happy that you talked with him. He was always dispensing advice, always helpful. He was lovable, but he came from a disciplined family. As I grew up and I met some of his brothers, some of my uncles, they were all kind of salty old farmers, but they were always congenial. And they were always happy to see you, and
firm handshake.
They worked for their livings, and they scratched it out of the earth.
Wow. What kind of a dad was he? Was he around much?
He wasn't around a lot. He was, again, so I was born in 1954, and then after Tater Tots came along, he had to go to a lot of places. But he was around enough, and I never... they had raised 5 daughters already before I came along. And so, did I raise myself? Sort of. My mom was always there. And I think she doesn't get enough credit. her name is Addie. It's not short for Adelaide or anything like that, but it was straightforward. Addie. In fact, Joe's daughter is named Addie.
Oh, cool.
She was always there. And she came from a house, her upbringing was rather different than mine. I won't say abusive, but her father was very stern, and it was a whole different upbringing. And I think that's how, she came and after raising 5 daughters, my brother and I came along, and I think she was always there, but I was never. I had chores to do around the chores, like I lived on a farm. No, we lived in a house across from the golf course there in Ontario, and I'd mow the lawn, I'd take out the garbage, and I'd do whatever my mom asked. But it wasn't like they were always after me.
Right, you weren't waking up as milk.
No, I had to get up and go to school, but none of that stuff.
What kind of did he change when he retired? What kind of a grandpa was he, Steve?
Well, I think he was a consummate grandpa.
In what way?
Well, so how many grandkids did they have? About
jeez.
Well, you figure from 8 kids, and you know how it goes. It goes exponentially from there. But he was always looking out for us and for our future. And he knew everybody's name. And as long as he could travel around, and my mother would, they would go, and not necessarily it wasn't an era of soccer games and stuff like when you and I were growing up. But events were important. In fact, during his upbringing, they would always have little performances. There were skits, there were recitations. They couldn't afford a piano, but they entertained themselves, and that carried over into the upbringing of us as children and the grandchildren. When I was in my formative years, we would have Grigg family reunions, and we would go to Park City. So this would be in the 80s. We'd go to Park City. He would provide a condo there at the place, and every night we would get together and we would perform.
Really? Very cool.
We'd get together, and if we were just eating ice cream, that's fine. He would usually cook dinner. He was a great man that's where I got my love of steak. He was always he'd grilling steak. And one night we'd have steak sandwiches. Another night they would be big steaks. So for about a week, we ate like kings.
Carnivores.
We were definitely carnivores. And then the interaction that he provided these condos, and the interaction between families, this family we would go visit another family. And so even though the age difference between myself and my oldest sibling was about 20 years. So it's a big span, right?
Yeah, very big span.
And we could take our family and go over and see that family and get to know them because we were raised at different times. And he was not only turning the hearts of the siblings to their own siblings, but those little grandchildren could meet with Grandpa.
What a wonderful thing.
I mean, unheard of. Excuse me. I seem to be doing all the talking.
My daughter tells me that the best mix is a 90-10, with me being the 10%.
So he did his part in enacting that promise by raising a family that was so diverse and so far apart, by bringing them together and allowing us the opportunity to get to know each other.
I think that's so cool.
In his later years, after he retired, let me back up. In 1965, he sold Ore-Ida Foods, Lock, Stock, and Tater Tot to Heinz Corporation.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you do.
Gigantic.
That was in 65.
Yeah.
So life was still fairly simple. And Heinz, of course, is from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And when they would come out to finalize negotiations, they would fly in the private airplane of Heinz Corporation called the Flying Pickle, because back then Heinz pickles were a big deal. And so we got to go out, and they would fly into Boise, and then they would drive over to Ontario. And one time we got to go and, take a little trip, a little fly around the Boise area there in the Flying Pickle in a private airplane. And I thought, man,
living large.
This is big time. This is big time. And then one night he had them all over in our backyard for a steak fry. All these big corporate lawyers and financiers and executives from Heinz Corporation. We'd be in our backyard. He'd cook them steaks, and we'd eat corn, and they'd loosen their ties. That's the kind of guy he was. He was not puffed up, as it were, but he was genuine. You'd come away thinking there's a genuine guy.
Yeah, authentic.
Authentic. He was the real deal. What you saw was what you got.
Did you feel, Steve, that it was a hard act to follow?
Yes.
Your dad. How did you deal with that?
Well, I didn't worry about it until I got into my professional life. And I will say that I had a little bit of opportunity to have greatness thrust upon me. So when I was in my prime in advertising here in Salt Lake, the agency I worked for landed the Intel. They were making microprocessors at the time, but they landed that advertising account from Silicon Valley there. That was huge. And that was when technology was on one of those skyrocketing growth spurts. The request came. They wanted a moniker. What had happened is in Japan, their microprocessors, they came up with a phrase called Intel in it, and they would make it a big deal. They were drawing attention to something as seemingly insignificant as a microprocessor on your motherboard. But see, that is the computer. You know, that little thing about this big, that is the computer. Everything else is, just there to run it. And so they said, we want something like that. We want something like that in America. And it fell to me at the agency to come up with me and others, always a collaboration. And one of the principals of the agency, John White, the agency, Dolan Smith White, he was a copywriter, and he came up with the phrase Intel Inside, which, I mean, back then that was big medicine. And so we came up with that Intel Inside and that little circle around it. And it became the brand that you wanted your computer to have inside of it. That was the processing power. Well, Intel came up with the concept that, see, back then, PCs, personal computers, there was plenty of manufacturers, Compaq and IBM and all these different computers. And they would say, if you will develop your computer on a platform using our chip, we will pay for half of your advertising.
Wow.
And he said it'll be like heroin. He said they won't be able to resist it. And they couldn't. And so Intel Inside became the sought after brand. If your computer didn't have Intel Inside, then you just didn't have anything. And that launched through the 90s when that was implemented. That rose Intel to the number two consumer brand.
Wow.
After Coca-Cola.
Wow.
Let me back up. I never did answer your question. Well, I did. You said, did I feel...
Oh, yeah, under the shadow.
In the shadow, and I said yes, but I was fortunate. I was able to be a part of that Intel Inside thing, and I felt that I had left a mark. And so what we've tried to do as parents, we were never in a financial position to do reunions like he did.
They're expensive.
Well, it would be really, really expensive. Like I said, he invented the Tater Tot, not me. But we wanted to foster the same friendliness, the same camaraderie and knowledge and closeness that he fostered. He did it on a much larger scale than we could. And so we wanted to make sure that our kids loved each other and knew each other. And then we wanted to extend that to our grandkids.
How many grandkids do you have?
We have, total count is 18.
Wow.
And then there is one that was placed for adoption, but we have a very open relationship with that granddaughter. And then in Joe's second marriage, we inherited 4 more grandkids.
Wow.
Stepkids. And so all that makes 18. And while we try to get them together, and maybe it's the era, but it's really difficult to, even just across the valley, to get those families together because they're busy. And so the first Sunday of every month, we have Steak Sunday, and we invite them all over for a steak fry.
Oh, cool.
And so, and we've left it up to them. We provide the steak and the place to eat and a place to gather, and then they bring the potatoes and the fruit and the, and the cookies and stuff like that. We're lucky to have developed that tradition, and especially when you have a blended family like Joe has, it gets harder. The schedules are really complex, as you know.
I do.
And so getting everyone together has been a challenge. But the invitation is always there. We never turn anybody away, and we never scold anybody for not coming. And so that's the kind of attitude that we tried to adopt from Nephi and Addie. And
They were very welcoming and inclusive.
man, were they ever.
Yeah.
So with Nephi having a large family, people would come to town and visit, and they always could stay at Nephi and Addie's. After he had sold Ida to Heinz and was, after a couple of years, they phase you out. But, and so he had time on his hands. Now, as kids, we grew up with a trampoline. Now, back in the mid-'60s, nobody had a trampoline.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
And so the trampoline that we had was one of the big professional ones like they use in like collegiate gymnastics, great big one. And one of our things to do during the summer was sleep out on the trampoline. And so he would come out sometimes, and he was a big fella back in the day. He would come out and he'd lay on that trampoline, and we'd all go,
yeah.
We'd all kind of roll in and crash into him. Well, we'd lay out there and we'd look up, and we would just talk about whatever.
Would he tell stories?
He used to tell stories about things, and that's what's in his book.
Yeah.
About when he was a kid and some of the things that shaped his life. It was after one of those nights we had gone to sleep, and he said he got on his knees on the trampoline, and he said, Father in heaven, what now? And kind of a prayer like that. I am yours to direct. And that's when he got his call to be a mission president.
In Scotland.
In Scotland, yes. And so, much to my protest, we packed up and moved to Edinburgh, Scotland. And so I didn't get to go to American high school. I went over there, and I felt cheated. Everybody who looks back on it now says, wasn't that great? No, because over there, when you go to high school, you go to learn, because when you're done, what's called senior secondary, when you're done with that, you go into the workforce. Going to college or going to university, as they called it, was only for the very, very, very intelligent, the royal smart people. Not like here. Here in America, college is sort of an accepted path after high school. Anyway, over there it wasn't so, and so that age group, we did not have pep rallies and football teams and the rah-rah and the sociality that we have in America. But that's okay. That was their culture. And so I was in that. I look back now and say I'm better off for having been there. But when we came back from Scotland, they settled in Salt Lake, not back in Ontario.
Do you find that, this is sort of a leading question, but do you find that you enjoy being a grandfather more than you thought, or was this something that you always look forward to?
I didn't really think, fatherhood is challenging and rewarding enough. And then I didn't really think about being a grandpa until one came along. And I thought that was such a wonderful opportunity, because we worked hard to raise our kids. And then there's always the thought of, did I raise my kids well enough for them to raise their kids? How it goes. And so, of course, with the first grandchild, and they become kind of this point in life. And then the second grandchild is great. And then you sort of, at some point, you sit back and you go, wow, it's happening, right?
Yeah.
It's happening. It's growing. Our family is growing. And then you start learning how they want to raise, my kids want to raise their kids. They don't want us to raise them. But like my dad did, he was influential in holding the larger family together. And so that was our goal. We wanted to be like Nephi and Addie, because they did a good job at that. Now you can't
replicate.
You can't replicate it, nor can you guarantee it.
No, of course not.
You do the best you can. You realize how important agency is in this life. And you can't just give it lip service. Say, yeah, I believe it. But I really do believe how important agency is in raising children, raising myself, and influencing our marriage. But as the family started to grow, I wanted to be, as best I could, available to our grandchildren. And wow, it's become really challenging now.
Well, let me ask you this question too. And I'm not asking you to necessarily beat your chest, but if you want to, this is a grand opportunity to do it. What would you think, what are a couple of qualities that you have, what I would even call superpowers with your What kind of grandfatherly superpowers do you have?
I can make them laugh. I don't know, is that a superpower?
It's a superpower. Sure it is.
I can relate to each one. I feel like I can approach each one, and I've taken an interest in each one, and I know what they're doing, so that I can, when they come over, excuse me, with the old whistle, I can talk with them, not necessarily on their level, but I can relate to them. They know I'm their grandpa. They know I love them. We always hug them when they arrive, and we hug them when they leave. And that sort of familiarity we have inherited from my father. Everybody's welcome. Boy, is it challenging when you get a house full.
Tell me about it.
And I was trying to think earlier how to say it, but all relationships are not perfect. We have a trampoline because I had a trampoline, and all of our grandkids have loved the trampoline. They come over and on a steak Sunday, we'll look out the window and there'll be grandkids jumping on the trampoline. They'll go there before they come inside.
Really?
Which is fine.
Yeah.
And a swing set. We wanted to provide and especially as much as we could to our children. They're there they're with them on a daily basis. And
a respite for them.
If we could provide a respite, is that how you say it?
Yeah.
For them, and have their kids sort of be out of their hair. Our house is, big enough that their kids can go down the basement and play and carry on and make a mess, and the grown-ups can visit. I am tickled to death and grateful that when they get together, they visit. They visit more with themselves than with us, per se, because, and I think that's okay. So what we try to do is be available. Of course, you got to feed them, and then you break down into just kind of a relaxing mode, and they're all in there talking about stuff that I am not as versed in, technology. I'm tickled to see how our kids are into books. They share the books they're reading, and then their children, so our grandchildren, are a reflection of their parents, and it's fun to see the traditions and the sort of like little habits they've picked up and how they are growing as individuals, making their own choices. And we want to make sure that however we can help shape that, we do, but we cannot interfere with their raising of their own kids unless they
ask you to come in.
Yeah. So we're entering a new phase where grandkids are driving now. Freaks me out.
We're not quite there.
It's weird.
Yeah.
Because you fear for them.
Genuinely fear for them.
Genuinely fear for them. And I genuinely fear for them in the environment we're in today.
Yeah.
Am I answering your question?
You are. One of the things that I think grandpas can do, I'd like to see whether you agree with me or not. I think grandpas should be a fountain of peace, especially in times like this. Do you have any of your grandkids that go, Grandpa, what's going on here?
I do want them to feel like we're going to Papa and Gigi. Papa, Sharon, she wanted it to Gigi, she wanted it to stand for Grandma Grigg, but it came to be known as gray-haired grandma. She's Gigi, Papa and Gigi. And we want the kids to want to come over.
Yeah.
Papa. And they're getting to an age where, like I said, they're driving, they're in projects in high school, they're becoming who they're going to be. They're becoming themselves. And we want to reinforce that. And we want them to feel like when they do come over, it's escape for both the parents and their kids. We want to be different than their parents in that they'll want to come and be there. But it's okay when they say, yeah, I want to go home. And that's okay.
Yeah, goodbye.
Yeah. And I'm happy to say, okay, we'll let you go, because by the time the next month rolls around, we're ready for some more.
Well, and just kind of thinking back about what we've been talking about, Steve, your oldest grandchild is 16, 17?
18.
We're a couple of years behind you. What advice, kind of maybe as a way to end our little fun discussion, what advice would you have for kids, raising kids, and then looking ahead to the future for, being around grandkids? And what kind of sage advice would you give them based on your experiences, based on your dad's experiences with you?
So let me back into that question. So my cousin, he's like a grand cousin, has developed the F. Nephi and Golden Grigg Legacy Foundation. He feels like the legacy of the Tater Tot and the legacy of our families ought not go unnoticed. We're a little late in the game, but see, we're all consciously or unconsciously creating a legacy. And I would like to let anybody who listens and who cares what I say to know that raising kids and raising grandkids it's a part of the grander scheme.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate using the cliche, I stand on the shoulders of blah, blah, blah.
That's true.
Well, that's true. I would say be available. You have to be there, and you have to continue I'll use a technical term, the connectivity. That was a big term back in the 80s and the 90s. You have to ensure, I think it's their job, my job, our job, to ensure the connectivity of the family. Who knows what my grandkids are going to do going forward? I don't know. And my kids were not angels all the time, but...
Oh, mine were.
I know. I've met them. Right? And so I think it's our job to be the glue that connects them to us and then gives them the foundation to connect forward.
And backward.
And backward.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole point, right?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I love that idea of connectivity.
Yeah, I mean, it's a flow. I don't want to say energy, but now is the time when I should start teaching my grandchildren more about my parents. Of course, they all know about Tater Tots, but more than Tater Tots, I want them to kind of know about him. One time when they were really little and it was easy to kind of engage them, I read them a story out of Briefs by Dave. I can't remember which one it was. I think it was a story about the fish, his little fish. They just thought that was so cool because that was real. That actually happened. It wasn't just a story. It actually happened. And I think I would advise children everywhere to, and maybe they do, to record audio of their parents.
Well, this is something that'll be
Something we talked
a treasure for your family.
I mean, it's one thing to say, here's what your great grandpa wrote. But if they could hear it, if they could hear
or see it,
video,
yeah,
we might have some videos. I'll have to go back and look. But I think with technology nowadays, take advantage of it. Be there, always be available.
So one final question. Well, this is a kind of I wouldn't say a crazy one, but I'm asking you to use your fertile imagination. Suppose I had the ability to teleport Nephi to this chair where I'm sitting, and it's a two-part question. To teleport him right here, and you had maybe 30 seconds to a minute. What do you think he would say to you about being a grandfather? And what do you think you would say what would you say to him, Steve?
I would say, Dad, I want you to know how much I love you and how much I appreciated what you did for us as children. In the sale of Ore-Ida to Heinz, he had a lot of financial capability. And what he did was he formed a company called Family Homes Company, and he provided and set aside, he earmarked stock options for our grandkids.
Really? Wow.
Not just us.
Wow.
But for our grandkids when they turned 18. Now, thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
You don't know how much that has meant to them. That has given them a leg up that we could not provide.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing that. That's what I would say to him.
That's
he
very
would
cool.
say he would probably say, "You're doing good. Keep trying. Keep loving your kids. It's always, no matter what, just keep loving them." And that's how you keep the flow.
Yeah, and I think that you're going to have some setbacks and challenges. I don't know.
Always have
My experience with working with families is there's no such thing as a perfect family. I do wills and trusts, and but yet on the other hand, I really admire your family and a bunch of other families that, like you said, just keep trying. I will tell you one last thing before we sign off, that there was some old advertisements back in the day for Ore-Ida, and the punchline was, Ore-Ida, these excited kids that are going to be eating tater tots, or the mom is fixing them. And nobody ever, you would be the only one that might appreciate this. if somebody says, well, do you want to do that? Or would that be a good thing? And I use the phrase Orida, but nobody asked me what it means. And so it does go back to advertising.
The phrase is Orida, it's all righta.
Yeah. Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah.
I just say Orida, you know.
Well, but you have to, you can't say one without the other.
No, that's right.
But again,
and I get what it's Oregon, Idaho.
It's Oregon, Idaho. Orida, it's all righta.
Okay.
Because what a weird name.
Yeah.
People think it's one word.
Yeah.
If you say if you say find me a story about Orida,
yeah.
Now the internet, Google now knows that that's RE-IDA. But sometimes when people aren't familiar with it, they think it's one word, Orida, like it's an Indian word.
So
everything's going to be all righta in your mind.
Well, and that would be my sign off here would be, thank you for listening to my good friend Steve. I hope you've enjoyed it. And Orida is going to be
all righta.
All righta.
That's it for today's episode of the Grandpa Channel. Until next time, keep the mic hot, the memories fresh, and the jokes just slightly inappropriate. I'm out of here. I got to go take a nap.